We just had a huge snowstorm come through northern Illinois and covered our job site in snow, so we're back cleaning out all of the snow everywhere so that we can get close to wrapping up this job in the next couple days. Now, I wasn't around for a couple days. I went with my family on a little trip. You know, I didn't film the actual action, but I also think that you guys have seen this stuff enough times in some of these previous build series that I don't have to show it on every one. I wanted to show more or less the kind of different details and the overall picture of how the job came together. And I don't know if you can see it really, probably can't, but I did get this hip trim done, but I've still got to put the hip over here and do some terminating trims up on this porch roof, but clearly I'm not going up there anytime soon, not until that all melts off. I will be able to take you through that, which are the details that I haven't really done before, but as far as putting soffit fascia on, that's pretty easy. Some of these other like ceiling details, but the porch is looking nice. The stone is looking good. So once I get these doors trimmed, we'll be able to put our custom trims on top of this stone, run our steel, and then we've got a little bit of a unique detail here to do where that overhang kind of wraps around. That's something that I always like to do. I hate it when people just dye overhangs on the ends of buildings. Continue it in, make it look good. It really does make a difference. Now, I'm not talking bad about anybody, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're gonna zoom in here to the neighbor's building. We did not build it, but I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. I'm saying you see that detail right there. Well, they ran the porch right to the edge of the building and just stuck a piece of trim. That's not the way we like to do it. If you would have ran that gable just a little bit further so that that corner trim could have sat on top of it, it would have looked so much better. So enough talk about what we've already done. Let's get on to what we're going to do. So first thing I'm going to do is go start on these overhead door trims so that we can run this outside steel while the guys are going to work on. We're gonna get our base trim going. We're gonna get prepped for our ceiling. So the goal today is to get our ceiling done, our outside walls covered, and really make a push for tomorrow wrapping up. It's gonna be hard, but we're gonna go for it. So when doing the garage door, the straight jam is gonna come up and do what it always does. I always bend 1.5 inches down, only instead of going at 90, we're going at a 45. Now here on the back side, what I do is I just try to encapsulate this framing here, do a simple bend over here, because this side is gonna come right over top. And so all this will get hidden, but let's do that one next. So this is the first piece that I'm gonna put on, and it's this little angle piece. Now you'll notice I'm gonna do the same thing that I always do on all of our header door trims, is I do a 3.5 inch cut here on a slight angle out. And that's to get the water out away from the jam. I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna do 1.5 inch bend at 45 degrees, and I'm gonna leave all of this material long. Let's see what happens here. This is always tricky. You gotta be careful. You don't wanna scratch these dark trims, so I always kind of go higher than I'm gonna be, and then I like to bring it down where it's gonna finish. So you can see right here, if I get this in, hopefully you can see it. This is the worst spot right here because you've got, get my shadow out of there. If you notice, I didn't take this cut exactly to my point here at my mark. I actually ran it just shy, and that is hopefully to cover up as much of this little gap where you have this transition as possible. And then over here you can kind of see, and it's really hard, the shadows, but you can see now how that just caps my J channel that's underneath of there. And when we put our steel, I'll show you that. It's gonna get tucked just like every other detail so that the water flashes out and goes right over top of our steel. And up here, I will basically use this now to make a couple marks, and I'll bend that over top, and then I'll do the same thing up here, minus the kick out. I'm not gonna kick it out. It's just gonna basically miter right around. And all that goes in there nice. See, I got that bend up, that way when the next piece of steel comes over top, there's no line right here. It looks like it's supposed to, you know? Kind of like this detail right here. So when I push it up, it's gonna look nice. Sorry about all the shadows. Now that I get these corners on, what I do is I use the framing to just kind of mark where this is, and I'm gonna take it back off now because I can't finish this cut, and I'm gonna bend it over. I'm just gonna fold it down so when I make this piece come across, I can put a nice little miter on it and it should look phenomenal and allow a place for the water that's coming across the top to just kind of keep going down the hill and right out onto our steel. There you go, you can see. So I bend that tab down and it should allow the next piece water to come over and everything just kind of tucks in nice. You're gonna have this spot here that will get covered up for the most part, but we always like to throw a little bit of silicone when we put our J channel that goes on top of here, and I'll show you that later. This is the one spot you gotta worry about right there. Now you can see here the top piece, and this, you know, this should conceptually make sense what we're doing. We're basically thinking about water and always overlapping the top guy onto the next lower piece so that it's a constant downward, you know, the water is going to constantly be just going downhill till it hits this point, and we're going to make sure that our steel is tucked up under here and goes out. So you can see here what I'm going to do is I ran this all along. I just always over measure my miter, so it really wanted to be, I think you can see it right there. I just went out another strong 1/16 or 1/8, and so now I'm going to go ahead, I will leave this back leg here, make this cut to the designated mark, and cut this out so that way water will hopefully flow right over that. Now notice what I've done here is I've left that just slightly long, and that's just to make sure that right back at this point any water is going to get out and over, but right behind here, right back here in that corner, if I open that up, remember that was the spot I told you we like to probably throw a little bit of silicone. See that little gap? We'll throw some silicone in there. I just wanted to make sure everything fit. I might actually trim a little bit of this line back just so it's a little bit closer, but that's our detail. It's really not a whole lot. I know some double-sided tape maybe is the answer here, but honestly, once it's all done, it looks really good. Got our trim details done. You can see I always like to just take my hammer after making these miters and just ever so slightly just kind of rounding that trim detail over. But I think that turned out pretty nice. You see there's just a slight edge. I leave that metal from the top of this trim. I leave just a little bit there. That way any water comes out and rolls past. And I cut that just a slightly bit larger, and I'll throw some silicone back in here when I put my J channel on as well, and that'll stop anything from hopefully wicking back in there. But everything else has kind of got a slight slope, and it should just run out. I know a lot of guys will use a drip edge, but this detail would not look good. I don't believe with a drip edge. So now I can, now that I got all these right where I want them, I'll go on the underside and I'll tack some nails to hold it all up. But I think it's gonna look pretty good. The clipped corners or the angled doors, they're a little bit more work. You know, the clip corners are definitely, they're definitely more work, but like most things, a little bit extra time for the details usually wins in the end, and nobody remembers how long things took, but they do remember how they look when they're done. So remember that, take a little bit extra time. You've heard it a million times before, but it is so true. It might have taken the whole morning, but we got those door trims all done. So we're ready to put our steel on. You can get a good look at what those are gonna look like. Also down here, this brick, Greg went around, put that double angle on. It's quite large. I'm not a super big fan of the size of it because our steel is gonna be back. You can really see over here, steel's back an inch off the wall while this is about 4.5 inches. But I think it'll look good. The only thing I'm concerned about, so we put some silicone on these joints. I don't want any water, you know, sitting there and running back in, getting behind the stone. But I think we take a step back here, it's really looking sharp. Can't wait to get this steel on. We're gonna go grab a bite to eat. People always say, where do you guys go eat? Looks like you're out in the middle of nowhere. We're in the middle of somewhere, but yeah, we gotta drive about 10 minutes to find food. We don't like to pack our lunches because, man, you work outside all day and then you go, what? Sit in your trailer, sit in the building, sit in your car. You're still cold, eating a cold sandwich. I like to go grab a nice warm bite to eat, warm up a little bit, come back motivated to go. So let's do that. Now we've got our door trim on. We've started by putting our first sheet of steel on, and you can see here kind of what I was talking about. Now you might be saying, oh, missed the cut there, Kyle. No, actually we didn't. You'll see when I slide my J in why that was cut a little bit longer. How about this? Talk about frustrating and annoying. This roof has been dripping on us all afternoon. I wish I could somehow just get it to all come down, but it's staying up there. The screw heads are keeping it intact. I just got Greg skipping a couple sheets here, 2 sheets in fact, so that I can work on this trim detail and get it going, but he can keep running steel ahead of me, and then I'll just tuck my trim as we go, and he can hopefully get these pieces installed. Try to stay a step ahead of me so I can wrap up these details. Got an electrical here for customer. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to do this. We talked about it because the layout, it just doesn't work. It's centered in this space, but the rib lines don't really work perfectly for him. So he's going to make something to bring his light fixture up off of the steel. If I remember, I'll try to show you what he comes up with there. So you look down here, you can see what I was talking about, where right here I had told you don't worry about that being cut. It looks like it's cut off, but when we slide this trim down, it goes in nice and tight, and this way we can make sure, see all that, see that? I just pushed that water off this trim and look at it, it's running down. See that? That was actually amazingly timed, just like I planned. So when we do this, all that water is gonna work its way right down. Now when we come up here, and it is raining like crazy, this trim here, if you look in here on this detail, I've notched that out. And I just ran it long, and then I slide my top trim in just to kind of eyeball where everything is going to line up. And I've marked it, and I'm just going to finish this cut just a little shy, a little under my line, and that is because I'm going to tuck all this. We don't need all this extra material. We'll get rid of some of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically cut this back here. Ouch. Did we just have snow fall off the roof? Yeah. And see how right now I'm tight, and I got a nice, my trims are nice and tight together. I can basically take this dimension here, which we're gonna call it 7/16. YouTube probably thinks that my phone rings nonstop. Kind of does. 7/16. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this trim out. I'm gonna go a 1/2 inch. I always go a little bit bigger because I can always trim more off. I can't grow steel. Get my snips. We're gonna do a green one here. We do a red one here. Then I'm gonna snip off just a little bit. Do a little bend down. We'll make this miter cut. Remember, we're not gonna go an exact tip miter. We're gonna leave it just a scotch long. My wife hates that word, Greg. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
She hates that, and she hates suckle. The word suckle bothers her something fierce. Just gonna spread open that hem there. Now, if we did this right, I'm not saying we did, but every once in a while, blind squirrel finds a nut. Now we got this nice miter here, It's not going to be open. If I would have cut that to an exact point, this would have been open just a little bit. Now if you look up in the top without getting the camera too wet, you can see here we got this nice place for the water to drip right over, go all the way down and go out the end like I showed you a little bit earlier. So that's the detail here. That's really nice, turned out perfect, and we're gonna go down the line and do the same thing on the other end. There you go, we just got the steel through that first big door. You can see same transition trim detail work there on the end. Coming down, we got it sloped. Same sort of deal here. Water's all gonna run right over top. This detail here is so important, guys. This is what keeps water from going back up in here. Make sure everything's running out, and it stops water from going into this point here. Water won't go here. It's gonna run down, it's gonna hit this J, and it's gonna hit the wall and go straight down. I'm also liking the way that detail looks down there with the brick. Starting to grow on me here. Now we just need to get through this door and get over to that roof. I guess I could explain to you guys that basically I don't have any footage of the installation because I was working, so I couldn't, you know, take video of it, and all of my GoPros were dead, and I didn't bring any chargers or anything, but we've got all this steel up. Hopefully, you know, doing some of this detail work helped somebody. I think it works really well. I think it looks very good, which is the ultimate goal, to be functional and aesthetically pleasing. But now you can see the only time we snap lines on a building is over door headers, because we don't know exactly where it's going to lie. So we just snap, or we punch our holes in the long sheets and then use that as a guide to snap a line through. And then we'll go ahead and do our best to get those screw holes right on that snap line and wipe the chalk off. You got to make sure you wipe the chalk off.